9 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on The Game. Oh, boy. Do we have a lot to talk about this morning?
We do. A lot. And again, man, there is never a dull moment in the South Carolina athletics world. It's just something is always happening. And, man, yesterday was a crazy day.
It certainly was. A lot of fronts. Baseball won last night. We'll get to that, but that's not the lead story of what happened across Gamecock sports. And, yesterday was one of those days that, unfortunately, because it was April Fool's Day, you almost didn't believe everything that you saw when it popped up, and you had to go get, the double verification on.
Yep.
Like, okay, I don't know if that's true or not. Let me go to another outlet and see if they're also reporting on the same thing. And all the things that we're about to talk about are indeed true, though one of them a little bit questionable of I didn't know that was possible, which we'll get to here in a moment. But besides all that, how are you doing today, Jack? You finally got a baseball win last night. You didn't have to talk about, or you didn't have to write about another depressing loss. We're finally back in the win column.
Yep. Finally, right? 7-game losing streak is over. And we'll see, man. Look, it's a big win, world champs, they won.
That's right, Game 7 of the World Series.
They won Game 7 of the World Series last night. So hats off to the Gamecocks for, now they could say they're not only College World Series champions, but they're world champions.
Do the Dodgers have to ship them the Commissioner's Trophy now?
Yes, I believe so, and a pair of Mickey Mouse ears. So that's all fun. And I'm sure a trip to Disney World is on the books for that squad.
Yeah, I'm sure it is because, again, that was the biggest game of the entire year, according to Coach Maneri, and they definitely needed to win it, which you'll hear from him coming up in just a little bit. But we do have to kick things off with portal discussion right after our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
This time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803-ALL-9s. I don't want to say we saw it coming, but I don't think anybody was shocked to see the portal news yesterday happen with Meechie Johnson officially announcing his return to South Carolina. We've been doing this portal thing for almost a decade now. 2018 was the first year that it was really like a thing, and guys been able to transfer for a long time, but obviously it's a whole lot easier to do now. I cannot think of somebody that started their career at School A, transferred to School B, to only transfer back to School A, to ultimately transfer back to School B again, like Meechie Johnson is going to do.
We've seen a few guys in the portal era in just any sport leave a school, go to another school, then come back. But to do it twice is something that I think is pretty unprecedented because the circumstances made sense for why Meechie went back to Ohio State this past year because, they had a coaching change, that he's closer to his family.
Was it his grandfather that was sick?
Not sure.
Somebody in his family was in poor health,
yes.
And that was a reason why he wanted to go back.
Yes. So that makes sense, right? And I understand it. But, things didn't work out necessarily at Ohio State, and why not give Lamont Paris a call, see what he's doing? How's the family? How's Columbia? How's everything treating him? And then, hey, what's it going to take to come back home?
It's clear he didn't burn any bridges here,
which is good.
I know, especially coming off of making the return to the tournament, a lot of people were upset with him going to Ohio State or going back to Ohio State. And again, it seemed like there were some personal things going on there that were a contributing factor to why he decided to go. And this year only played 10 games and chose to sit out the year for, some personal things going on with his family and stuff. And he is having to apply for a waiver to get an extra year of eligibility, which we don't know 100% sure he's going to get yet. But if he does, then he will indeed be playing another season at South Carolina.
Which I think he will. I think he's going to be back for next year, and that'll be good to see. And look, he is a big improvement over anything South Carolina had last year. And look, I don't think South Carolina is necessarily at the point where I've seen a few people be like, "Oh, Meechie Johnson's coming back. That's not good." And people were thinking, like, hopefully this is an April Fool's joke. Like, South Carolina's not necessarily at the liberty to be super selective over, they could pick guys they want, but anything's going to be better over what they had last year outside of Colin Murray-Boyles. So, look, Michi's a significant upgrade at the guard position. He's familiar with the system. He already knows what needs to be done. The guy's a winner, too. I mean, he came here, helped South Carolina turn things around within a year after year one of LP, and he got them to the tournament, helped them. He was a huge piece as the leading scorer. So, but I still feel like you need to go out there and get a – Michi could be a point guard like he was 3 years ago, but I think it'd be better served for him to be a 2 and go get a true point guard, your Talon Cooper, if you will. But I know he's not going to have any eligibility.
Well, that's the thing is we saw Michi Johnson when he wasn't the featured guy and was kind of more of a compliment to what Talon Cooper was doing. He thrived a lot more. And yeah, he was hot and cold. Some days he'd go out there and he'd make you 6 threes. The next night he'd go out there and he'd make 1 out of 10 or something like that. So, you're going to get streaky Michi still probably. But again, if he's not your main feature guy, that's okay. Give him his opportunities to shoot when opportunities present himself, but put pieces around him or have pieces around him where you can still be successful even if he's not having a great night.
Yeah, you just need to find who's going to complement him the best. Now, is that Trace and Eaglestaff? Or is that I still think, like I said, I still think you need a true 1 out there at the point, and I think there's got to be someone out there that can kind of help Michi out, and maybe Eli Ellis will eventually be a guy like that. Who knows? But I think South Carolina made the right decision here, bringing back. I think it was a pretty easy decision to bring Michi back, and it's good to see him home.
But between Eaglestaff, Michi, Miles Studi, and Eli Ellis, this team's not going to be afraid to shoot threes.
No, they're going to be dishing out a lot of 3-pointers, and that's why I think you need a distributor at the top. This team worked so well 2 seasons ago when you had Talon Cooper running things at the point, and he could hit his own shots, but the man distributed on offense, and that's what I think is next on the agenda here for the offseason checklist, is finding that guy. And then also, I mean, do you get Colin Murray-Boyles back? I think I do wonder now, like, this kind of feels like you're getting the band back together in a lot of ways. Like, you can't bring everyone back from 2 years ago, but bringing Michi back, that's a huge piece right there.
It's a start.
Yeah.
I mentioned reading things yesterday, maybe not believing them to a degree. When I saw another piece of headline news from the portal, it was very believable. That being Cam Scott entering the transfer portal. And quickly here, if we went back a year ago, April of 2024, and I said a year from today, on April 2nd, Cam Scott's going to be in the transfer portal, you would have thought, oh, man, the world must be ending. What went wrong with this superstar from Lexington at South Carolina in year number 1? But now we see this yesterday, and we're kind of like, yeah, makes sense. Because as we talked about many times, he did not end up being the guy we thought he was going to be in year 1.
It makes so much sense. He did not have a good year. And I think a lot of that you can say is just, I don't know if it's readiness for the college level, the SEC, but the SEC packed a punch this year, and it dealt him a massive blow just because he didn't see time on the floor, number 1. I think that's a bigger reason why he's transferring, but also he couldn't score consistently.
Well, and when he came in, because I think we all assumed that CMB was probably going to have a good enough year where he was going to have the opportunity to go to the draft. And, yeah, he's not made his official announcement yet, but I think most of us agree that he's probably not coming back next year. And you see, okay, CMB has a great second year, goes off to the draft, and then you're turning over the reins to Cam Scott as being the next feature guy on this team. You do not see anything close to enough from him this year that made you comfortable enough to think that could be the case. Now, could he develop a lot in the next offseason? Sure. But you don't know that for sure. You need to have a sure thing to build your team around. And I imagine the fact that he flipped from Texas to South Carolina probably commanded a lot of money through NIL. And with the production not being what we thought it was going to be number 1, probably was not going to warrant being paid that same amount of money in year number 2. And again, this is all speculation. Maybe that's why the two parties couldn't agree, and now he's going in the transfer portal. That's my best guess on how this probably went down.
No, that's totally valid, just because, again, he probably did command a lot in NIL money because, I mean, hey, flipping him from Texas, I mean, even though he's a hometown kid, that's a lot to do there. And money talks. So I think what's probably best for him is probably going to a mid-major, a smaller P4 school, building some minutes, building up your confidence, man, because it's got to do a lot to you to not be able to go out there and perform the way you want to, let alone not play at all. So you wish him the best. I mean, hey, it's just it happens, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes things just don't work out.
And look, he seems like a good kid. It didn't seem like he was a problem on the team or anything like
good
that.
Kid
but
for sure.
From what you expected out of him, he just didn't live up to. And like you said, I think going to a mid-major and getting that confidence, balling out there, and then maybe make a return. Who knows? Maybe he comes back to South Carolina in a year or two, because clearly that is very much on the table for other players. But kind of coming to his own a little bit in college basketball would do him a lot of good that he just wasn't able to do in year number one here at South Carolina, unfortunately.
Now, the other big piece of news yesterday.
This was the one.
We can only put it off for so long.
This was the one that I was like, really?
So, Jamari Thomas, I didn't think he had another year of eligibility.
Nobody did. Lamont Paris didn't think he had another year of eligibility. Jamari Thomas didn't think he had another year of eligibility.
No. Like, he walked on senior night. He had completed his 4 years, and that was that. And then I get tagged in a post from Jamie Shaw from On3, and it says, Jamari Thomas will enter the transfer portal. I'm like, what? How does he even have any eligibility left? What am I missing here? He didn't redshirt. He never got hurt, he's seriously injured.
He's played 4 legitimate seasons of college basketball.
So my thought process is he's going to probably file a waiver with the NCAA just like everyone does. And he's probably seen what's been going on with Diego Pavia, all these other guys. Heck, Nick Pringle, he's getting an extra year because of the JUCO situation. There's a lot of reasons why. Michi Johnson's going to get another year. I mean, I don't know. And I don't think it's going to happen because he never – there was never a situation where it's like, all right, I can see why you got another year.
Well, that's the thing.
He played all 4 years, man.
What is his angle? Because, again, Nick Pringle had the JUCO thing. Michi Johnson had the personal stuff where he didn't play a full season at Ohio State this past year. What's Jamari Thomas's argument on why he should get another year?
Yeah, putting LinkedIn to the side and putting the real world behind him, man.
I don't know.
He needs to have the photo and his profile with the open to work thing. Like come on, man. It's your career is over. Just go overseas or something, man.
As ridiculous as it sounds, he did miss a handful of games this year.
Oh, please.
Listen,
he missed 2 weeks.
I'm not saying that it's right, but the NCAA has handed out waivers for a lot less. I'm just, maybe that's the angle. Maybe it's like, hey, I didn't get to play a full season at South Carolina. Give me another year of eligibility. And the NCAA very rarely denies these things at this point because they get taken to court over it. So why not? Give him another year, I guess.
If that ends up being the case, I mean, he's in the portal, but if that ends up being the case, I will be shocked. That's going to be, you want to talk about game-changing news right there.
Yeah. Again,
that's a way to cheat the system
it opens up Pandora's box just like every other instance of waivers being approved. And again, listen, Jamari Thomas isn't going to go to the NBA. Right?
No.
Maybe he could land somewhere overseas in one of those leagues, but he's trying to extend his basketball career.
I don't blame
I don't
him.
fault him for that.
No, I don't fault him, but that was just such strange news yesterday just because it's like, huh?
Yeah.
He was out of eligibility.
Yeah. That one was the one you thought, oh, that's April Fool's, right?
Everyone was shocked by that.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I guess not. But, man, the gift that keeps on giving, the transfer portal, just this week
glorious.
alone. So, Michi Johnson, welcome back. You know how to get around town. Nothing's new to you. And hopefully we'll get some good production out of him this upcoming season. We'll certainly see. Last night, baseball finally into the losing skid. We'll dive into what happened over at Founders Park against Presbyterian coming up next. It is the Extra Point, Tyler Head and Jack Beltry, along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Tyler headed here for our friends over at Twin Peaks. Nobody knows beer better than Twin Peaks, and one of the things that they do best is beer. So what better place to celebrate National Beer Day coming up on Monday, April the 7th, than with our friends over at Twin Peaks. You can enjoy one of their signature taps, local crafts, ales, lagers, and seasonals. They have them already at a teeth-chattering 29 degrees in 22-ounce mugs. So get down Twin Peaks coming up on April the 7th to celebrate National Beer Day. It's also the same night as the National Championship for college basketball. So you can take in the last big game of the college basketball season with an amazing, delicious 29-degree draft beer on National Beer Day as well. But that's not the only reason to get down Twin Peaks. TV as far as the eye can see, tons of delicious food and all the sports you can take in each and every day with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista.
He's had 4 really good at-bats, and he hits this one hard, and there's a nice stop from his knees by Rollison. The throw across gets away from the first baseman. 1 run scores. Here comes Blake Jackson home, and he will trot to the plate, and the Gamecocks have won it 11-1.
At long last, finally comes to an end. 7-game losing skid. South Carolina finally picking up the win last night over Presbyterian, 11-1 in a run rule in 7 innings. The the last inning there, 2 just bad defensive plays by Presbyterian. Jace Wood pops up to third base. I get lost in lights. I don't know what happened. He drops a very easy pop up, and then the shortstop overthrows first base when Nathan Hallbutt's ball in play that allows the final 2 runs to go across the plate. And midweek games in general already are running late enough, and we knew South Carolina was going to win. I was rooting for the run rule. I was like, let's find a way to score 4 more runs in the bottom of 7th, get this thing. I was really rooting for more runs to be scored in the bottom of the 6th because they had the bases loaded when Scobie ended up striking out to end the frame there. And if they would have gotten 3 outs top the 7th inning like that, it would have been over then. So I was glad to see a run rule.
Nice little quote-unquote walk-off there, but good win last night, right? Look, you were down 1-0 in this game. Ethan Petrie hits the 2-run homer to get you going. Career homer number 52 for him. He's 10 away now from tying Justin Smoke for the all-time South Carolina program record for homers, and 11.
He's definitely going to get there as long as he stays healthy.
As long as I think he will. He's got enough home run power to do it. I think by the point of the postseason, I think he'll have already gotten it, maybe. But good win for South Carolina last night. A lot of runs. It was not pretty at times, but hey, that's baseball. It took 5 runs in the 6th and then 4 more in the 7th to win it.
Coach Maneri led off his presser last night, just talking about how good it felt to finally win a game.
Well, it's nice to win a game. I guess that's the understatement of the day. There were several good things tonight. Some really good clutch hits and balls hit hard with runners in scoring position. It was a shame that the game ended the way it did. It got ugly there at the end, but up until then, there was a lot of good stuff and some good pitching, and like I said, just bottom line is it was good to win a game and get ready to go to start.
Last night was interesting from a lot of standpoints, and they really messed around.
A lot of bases. You were thinking, all right, he could be the second baseman this year, be very productive for this team. He's out there playing left field, and that's something Maneri did say. He's been putting him out there in the outfield a lot more during workouts and practice and stuff to try to get him ready for the game situations. And there hasn't really been a point where it's like, all right, you can play Caden Gaskin, but bring up a quick story from last week, and I think Paul mentioned it again last night, but I asked him the other day, like before the Tennessee series, he had pinch hit Gaskin for carry-on during the UNC game, right during the middle of it. It's like 8-3, right before they made the rally.
Yep.
And I asked him, like, why'd you do that? Like, is carry-on hurt? Did he do something wrong? And he's like, no. He basically asks, like, the entire team who wants to come in, pinch hit, step up for the team. And Gaskin was basically the one to say, I'll come in, coach. I'll come through for us. And lo and behold, he ends up working a walk, loads the bases, nobody out, and South Carolina ends up scoring 4 runs in that inning and then ties the game an inning later. So it's stuff like that I'm sure leads to him getting some at-bats. And he didn't do well yesterday, 0 for 4 with a strikeout. But the fact that, Paul put him in the lineup, he's going to reward players for good effort and all that stuff, and a desire to help the team win. And then the rest of the lineup, I really did like the idea of putting Hall and Petrie in the 3 and 4 spots. When you really think about it, Hall and Petrie hitting 1 and 2 in the order only gives you so much, because as we've seen lately, those are your 2 most productive hitters that can actually hit home runs. And you're, instead of maybe a 3 or grand slam, it's a solo home run, or at best a 2-run homer. And I think what Paul is doing makes sense, because if you can get the other 2 guys on base potentially, I don't know if it's going to be like this every game, but if you can get the other 2 guys on base, you potentially set up for more run support, which is something this team desperately needs.
Yeah, and most of your production last night was in that middle to back half of the order. Hall went 2 for 2 with 2 RBIs. Petrie had the home run and had another hit in there as well. Got walked a couple times. And then Scobie, Hollins, Carry-On, and Brayland all had hits themselves. The only ones that did not reach base via hits were Gaskin and Kenry Kazmar at the top end, bottom of the lineup. So, again, kind of top to bottom, good hitting night for South Carolina. Again, this is Presbyterian, so they're not saying, hey, everything's fixed, everything's okay now, but just getting a W back in the clubhouse, as Paul Maneri mentioned the other day, at least for the moment, gives you a sense of relief. And you're heading into a series this weekend, yes, on the road, but against Mississippi State team that struggled just as much as South Carolina has in conference play. And, again, you got to go in there and find a way to win this series, or you're really going to be in trouble.
I mean, I think you already are in trouble at 1-8 in the SEC. That is going to be tough to come out of, barring some miraculous run here where you can just win, like go on a huge winning streak here to really change the tides of the season. But I will say, man, I don't care that I came against Presbyterian. It is what it is. No one's going to really, congratulate you for winning this game. Although Game 7 of the World Series, like people took that and ran with it yesterday.
Maybe it should have been fireworks and confetti and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, my gosh. But a win is a win, and it builds the confidence, man. That's the biggest thing you could take away from last night is that it's a monkey off their back. They can go out here, play loose again on Friday. And, man, if they win Game 1, who knows, man? They're going to start getting rolling, I think, here soon with how much lighter the schedule is compared to the last few weeks.
In these next two series against A&M Mississippi State, two teams that also have 1-8 records, you got to find a way to win 4 of those 6 games. That's
Easily.
winning 2 series.
Win the 2 series. Man, if you could sweep.
If you sweep, that'd be great.
If you could sweep one of these series, that would be great. And this comes at the perfect time. You wish these series were at home, but going on the road maybe is really going to be good for you. Again, I don't know how. I know Mississippi State has a good atmosphere, but I don't know how crazy it's going to be this weekend for a team that is ready to fire their coach,
Well, and think about what the environment at Founders was like this past weekend for Tennessee. I talked to Russell Smith, who works for Fox Sports Knoxville on the show on Friday, and he asked me, he's like, hey, what's the environment going to be like? And I'm like, man, to be honest with you, probably not great. Because you're going to be about half full. There's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans there, and you have a fan base that has not seen a lot out of this team in recent weeks, and you can confirm it really wasn't that raucous of an environment last weekend.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. There were plenty more Tennessee fans there, especially by Sunday. And I think this upcoming weekend, I'm not expecting South Carolina fans to show up in droves, which, I mean, why would they? It's a 6.5-hour ride, and you get women's basketball on, and softball's home this weekend. But I will say, it might be playing to South Carolina's benefit to have these series coming up when they are. And these are two teams you have to take advantage of beating.
You're not going to have Mississippi State's crowd at full throat.
Probably not.
Clanging cowbells and all that kind of stuff and just being on top of you the entire game. If anything, they're probably going to be ready to turn on their team pretty quickly if things aren't going well.
Oh, no, totally. So that's why it's so critical here. And we're going to really find out if South Carolina is just better than what these other teams are, or if they are worse, because they're obviously not as good as the top teams in the country right now. But maybe there is a middle ground to where it's like, all right, maybe they're not as bad as everyone thinks. Maybe they are capable of winning some series.
Yeah, we'll certainly see again. That's coming up this weekend. First game starting on Friday night there for South Carolina, which you'll be able to listen to on our sister station at 8.5 WOMG, because women's basketball will be on the Final Four right here on the game. We'll transition over to football coming up next. Coach Beamer speaking yesterday, giving kind of a 2-week assessment on how things have gone in spring practice so far. We'll dive into that next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Tyler Head once again here to tell you about our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. Look, I care about your home's foundation, and I want it to be in good working order for you. And you should care too. That's why if you start to notice things around your home that are a little bit odd, a little bit mysterious, then you need to get them checked out. What kind of things will those be? Glad you asked. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors and windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com. I'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live without worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfixit.com for our friends at Canty Foundation Specialists. And welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyrett and Jack Belcher along with you here on your Wednesday. Only a couple weeks away, 2.5 weeks now from the spring game for South Carolina to wrap up spring practice for 2025. Yesterday, we heard from Coach Beamer once again, giving his lay of the land of what's going on with the team and how things have gone through spring practice so far. You know, the quarterback room is one that the quarterback spot specifically is one we don't have a lot of questions about because we know Lenore Sellers is the guy. But one thing that is interesting is what's the backup plan? This past year we had Robbie Ashford, guy that had started at Auburn, been around college football for a while. You kind of knew what to expect with him if Sellers went down, which he did. Got nicked up, had missed the Akron game, half the LSU game, and it was good that Robbie Ashford was there to fill in those gaps. This year's a little bit different. You have unproven guys behind Lenore Sellers. So what exactly is the plan behind him should it come to that? And Coach Beamer addressed that yesterday.
Great competition is what's going on behind Lenoris at quarterback. Dante Reno obviously has been here, and it's his second year in the program. Cutter Woods just got here. Aaron Nolan just got here. And Jimmy Francis, it's his second year in the program, so we're very young at that position, obviously, including Lenoris. I mean, it's only his, third year in the program. So we don't have a number 2 quarterback right now. I think, a lot of you guys are eager to anoint certain people as the backup, and we're all about competition, here as well. So there's great competition. Coach Shula is doing a great job of mixing up the reps of who gets work with that group, and sometimes it's Cutter, sometimes it's Air, sometimes it's Dante, and they've all flashed. I think they've all shown great improvement since the beginning of spring practice, and there's no question Dante's improved since last year. There's no question that Air is getting more and more comfortable. We did a little drive out there today where we didn't script anything, Phil. We just put the ball down and just basically played football like a game, and Air led his series. I mean, he led the offense on I was hoping it was going to be about a 4, 5, 6 play drive, but it ended up being a 19 play drive that he took the team down the field. But I'm really excited about Cutter Woods. You guys that followed him in high school know that he's a winner. It's just what he did in high school and comes from a great program up there at Westside with Coach Lane. So I really like the group. We're very young, but there's really good competition going on behind Lenoris right now for sure.
So, again, knock on wood, we hope we don't have to have this conversation of, oh, no, Lenoris Sellers is hurt. What happens now? But that always has to be in the back of your mind, especially with a quarterback that's mobile, one that, again, has a little bit of an injury history already. You always have to be prepared for that. And quite frankly, I don't know which of these guys you turn to. Again, Aaron Nolan has the highest upside given what he was coming out of high school, but he hasn't taken a snap in college. Neither has Cutter Woods. Dante Reno played in garbage time last year. You confident in him enough? What's your actual second choice here?
Well, the ideal scenario would be, all right, well, you brought in Aaron Nolan for a reason, right?
Sure.
And he's supposed to be the next guy after Lenoris, ideally, right? I think that is ultimately their plan. But is he ready yet is the question. Luke Doty continues to take snaps at the quarterback position. He's worn the green jersey when we've been out at practice, and he's still doing everything else, mind you. He's still doing his receiver work, still doing special teams, all that stuff. That's where I expect to see him this year. But don't rule it out, man. Don't rule it out the fact that, hey, why not give him a chance to be the backup this year, compete for that role? I think he could be – he's the only guy right now that has starting experience besides Lenoris. And, it's not – it was, Beamer referenced yesterday. When he first got here, Luke Doty was a quarterback full-time, and
yeah.
He was the guy at quarterback before they kind of the whole quarterback situation year one under Beamer was kind of strange. But Luke's a guy that maybe could be that guy, but who knows? I'm really interested in seeing who takes that next step forward.
That's what makes the most sense to me. And again, knocking on wood, hoping this doesn't happen, but let's say Sellers goes down early in the game against Virginia Tech, has to be out for a drive or a quarter or something along those lines. Luke Doty make the most sense to me. Because, again, he has that starting experience. And was he the greatest quarterback in the world? No, he wasn't, which is the reason why they ended up bringing in Spencer Rattler and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. Doty had his injuries and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that he has experience and the fact that if I hand him the keys for a short period of time, I know he can probably at least keep it on the tracks. I don't know what I'm going to get out of Aaron Nolan. Again, he's thought to be the future. And when Sellers moves on to the NFL, maybe after this year, the idea is it's going to be his team after that. But do I feel comfortable enough throwing him out there to the Wolves to play his first snaps against a Power 4 opponent? Not necessarily. Same thing with Cutter Woods. Again, Dante Reno, I don't know how much you learned from playing in garbage time and handing the ball off mainly last year. Like, at least when Lenore Sellers played in Rattlers last year, he was playing, significant snaps against lesser opponents, but throwing the ball, running around, those kind of things. Like, I don't think we've seen enough out of Dante Reno to warrant saying, well, yeah, he'd be the guy.
No, I mean, you're really going to have to figure it out. And I think Doty is probably the guy that makes the most sense right now. But I would like to see, because this is Doty's last year. I would like to see.
It is his last year, right? He doesn't have an extra year of eligibility.
This should be it. But I will say, like, I would like to see one of these other young guys maybe does well enough to where it's like, all right, they can be the guy, as the backup if, God forbid, he ever gets hurt.
Well, and that's the thing, too. Again, this scenario that I'm throwing out that, again, I hope does not happen is, okay, if Sellers is out for a drive or a quarter or something like that, Luke Doty keep you on track.
Yeah.
But if you're doing this for a long period of time, again, let's say it's a couple of weeks, then you're starting to say, okay, while initially maybe we're going to go with Luke Doty, we'd like it to be Aaron Nolan in the long term because, again, that's also setting yourself up for next year.
Yeah. And the thing about Air, I mean, like, you brought him in from Ohio State, really highly touted QB, didn't play at all last year. He's got his red shirt. He's already seemingly impressing because yesterday Shane did mention in that quote that there was a drive that, Shane expected to be 4 or 5 plays. Nothing too crazy, right? It ended up being a 19-play drive down the field that was led by Air. So that is something that you really like to see, a guy that can manage the game and also he's quick with his feet. He can throw. I mean, he's just got a lot that you like, and that ultimately probably should be the plan moving forward is him as the backup. But again, is he ready is the question. And the good thing is still got so much time to figure it out. The spring game is going to be a big indicator of who's made the most progress, but we'll still have the entire summer. We'll have fall camp. And then by the time you get to the season, hopefully all right, this is my QB2.
Yeah, and again, we're hoping these scenarios don't play out, but it is something that you have to discuss as a possibility if you do get in this situation this upcoming season. So hopefully that is not the case, but again, something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. Gamecock baseball, no grand slam last night, despite the fact they had a couple bases loaded situations where it could have happened. So the pot of the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway jumps up to $375. If you've not already, go online to roll1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win the the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Next opportunity comes on Friday night against Mississippi State. We'll come back and wrap up hour number one of the Extra Point. The NFL has decided on some rule changes, including some major ones that have been a hot topic of conversation around the league for the past couple years. That's coming up next. It is the Extra Point. Tyler and Jack on your Wednesday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is The Extra Point. Siderhead and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll get into the NFL and their rule changes for this upcoming season here in just a second. But before we do that, this upcoming weekend is Tartan Day South here in Columbia at the historic Columbia Speedway, April 3rd through the 6th, starting tomorrow. And we've got some tickets to give away. Text in now on the Firehouse Subs text line at 803-404-6100. Leave me your name, email address, and, of course, your phone number. And I'll let you know if you have won some tickets to Tartan Day South this upcoming weekend. And you can hang out there and you can wear a kilt. You can toss a telephone pole. All kinds of fun stuff they're doing out there. Does that sound like something you'd enjoy? Sound like your speed?
A kilt would be.
You ever worn a kilt? No?
No, that'd be interesting, though.
I hear it's a unique feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. That is. What about you? Are you gonna?
I've never worn a kilt before.
No, but I'm sure someone will.
I'm sure somebody will. Maybe Bill. Maybe we can get Bill out there and he can
get Preston
wear
out
one.
there in one.
Exactly. Yeah, that I'm sure they would thoroughly enjoy that. Yesterday, the NFL at their annual spring meetings voted on a number of rule proposals across the league for the 2025 season. One that was perhaps the biggest topic of conversation, the tush push. Now, that has been tabled as of right now, which means they're kind of kicking the can down the road, so it doesn't mean it's illegal yet, but it could be. Roger Goodell did reference yesterday that their former rule of not being able to push a player from behind could make a return, but as of right now, the tush push is still very much a thing in the NFL.
Yeah, and I know it's a subject that you either really love it or you hate it. I think getting rid of the tush push would kind of just be, I don't know if that'd be good in my opinion. Like, maybe it is, but again, it's a play. You got to be able to stop it, right? And it's very hard to stop. So if the Eagles can do it, if the Bills can try to do it, other teams should be doing it too, right? It's like the whole torpedo bat here.
Sure. Yeah, again, just like the torpedo bat conversation we had yesterday, this is innovation. Nobody's cheating, but nobody's doing anything illegal here. You just have a couple teams, one team specifically in the Eagles, that have perfected the way to do this, and other teams around the league are having trouble stopping it. And the NFL, they always go with, it's player safety, and I call BS on that every single time because they're selective when it comes to player safety and what they actually care about. And again, I could dive into an entire conversation on that, but I'll leave that for another time. But it's not a player safety thing. No. It's teams around the league that can't figure out how to stop it thing.
Yes, totally agree with you on that. It's just, there really is no true way to stop it when you have 700 pounds of man kind of pushing a quarterback. Now, it is possible to stop it because look back at the Bills-Chiefs playoff game last year. The Bills screwed it up so many times last year.
Sure.
To where it's I don't even know what they were doing. They weren't even doing a tush push necessarily. It was more so Josh Allen QB sneak to the right every single time. And so the Eagles do it to perfection to where it's all right, it's very rare. I think I've only seen them get stopped once. Yeah. So if that's the case, why isn't the defense maybe doing that? It's coming, so maybe bring all-out pressure. I don't know. Just thinking out loud here, but it would be bad to get rid of a play like that. It's part of football.
So that's been tabled to be voted on a little bit later. This one really sticks out to me. The on-site replay official will now be permitted to reverse flags that are thrown for hits to defenseless players, along with fouls for face masks, horse collars, tripping, and or running into the kicker. They will not be allowed to add a flag when an obvious foul has gone uncalled. Round of applause. Bravo to the NFL for finally doing something that makes a lot of sense with your expanded replay assist. I've said it for a long time. As much as the college football targeting rule is not enforced correctly, they at least allow it to be reviewed. And I'm good on this side of caution. You have a play, bang, bang play, somebody gets hit high, you throw a flag for it, okay, but you allow them to go back and look to see if it's targeting or not. It drives me crazy watching NFL games where, again, these guys go in at full speed. Some hits look nasty, and I get it. It looked bad. But on the first replay, you can see there was no hit to the head or neck area. The guy did a perfect tackle. He just hit him going really fast. Yep. And up to this point, the flags had to stand. But now, assuming they do this right, the replay official can say, no, it's not an illegal hit. We're going to pick up the flag, and we're going to keep going. Brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, that is the way it should be, right? And I think it's good when you're able to take a second look at these things because officials are not perfect, as we all know. NFL refs make some egregious calls from time to time, and it's good to have the backup support on that to kind of get the calls right as it should be.
Yeah, I'm totally in favor of that. Other things that we expected to see coming, the touchbacks being moved to the 35-yard line to encourage more kickoff returns. Again, I would have just preferred taking the kickoff point and moving it back 5 yards.
Yeah.
As opposed to kickers, because kickers are still going to have to kick it short. Like, you're now telling a kicker, hey, don't kick it out of the back of the end zone. It's better to kick it short and allow a return when you could just move it back to where it's harder to kick it out of the end zone.
Exactly. That one's a little puzzling to me because what were they at originally?
It was the 30 list past year.
Yeah. So you moving up 5 yards.
You're basically weighing, okay, is it more advantageous for us to just allow them to start at the 30-yard line or let them return it where they could break off and go farther?
It'd basically be the equivalent to if you kick a touchback, it's like kicking it out of bounds because in the NFL, I believe you moved to the 40.
The 40, yeah.
So it's like, and also that used to be such a big thing in momentum when it's like, oh man, they kicked it out of bounds in the fourth quarter, and we need a good drive here, so we get to start the 40. Now it's like, hey, you move up 5 additional yards. It loses the magic, I guess, if you want to call it that.
If this does indeed encourage more kickoff returns, okay, I don't know if it is, and I'm for making the offenses work more.
Yes.
So, if anything, I'm more in favor of moving the touchback line back as opposed to forward.
Yeah, when are we moving it to like midfield, man? Like, it's just getting ridiculous to this point to where it's like 35 should be the absolute last stop. Nothing more. If you move to the 40, then like people are going to be really not happy about that.
We'll see. Other things, as expected, both teams going to get a possession in regular season overtime like they do in the playoffs now. Hawkeye measuring system will be used for first downs. They will still have the chain gang there as a backup. They have tabled the receiving the playoff discussion that the Lions brought forward, and then one I was kind of sad about. They denied the no longer awarding first downs for defensive holding and illegal contact, where, if it's 2nd and 10 but it's illegal contact, it's an automatic first down.
Yeah.
That's always been dumb to me, but they denied that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, not surprised. But the Hawkeye measuring system is something that I'm interested to see because we saw that last year in the preseason. So I think that'll be good to see. Hopefully, maybe speeds the game up a little bit. And I'm glad they're not getting rid of the chain gang. I'm glad they're keeping.
You always got to have a backup.
Yes, always have to have a backup. Doesn't take people out of jobs, I guess. If that is, I doubt it's their full-time job being a chain gang member for 17, 18 games. But it's good to see that is being a small change amongst everything else.
Again, some positives, some questionable things in here, but that's what the NFL is going to look like in 2025. Yes, progress in a lot of ways. That'll do it for hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Coming up next, hour number 2, we'll dive into the women's Final Four. Who are the favorites? Is it South Carolina? How's this weekend going to go? We'll look into that coming up next here on the Extra Point on the Game. 10 o'clock, welcome back in. Hour number 2, it is the Extra Point. It's out ahead. Jalen Tart hanging out with me as he does each and every Wednesday here on the game. Oh, month of April, a lot going on, a lot of basketball.
Listen.
How you doing, Jalen?
A lot is it's like the same time every day that I come on. It's always a lot happening. Carolina sports has been on a trend going into the weekend, going out of the weekend. Last night, from what we've heard, going around, the Final Four is this weekend. Man, it's just April's been on a roll since it started yesterday, going from March. All the madness going on in March.
Where does April rank for you on like your sports months of the year? Because you got Final Four. Masters coming up. Baseball's obviously in full swing now. Like WrestleMania is in a couple weeks as well, which is important for guys like us.
Yes. October is really good.
October's number one for me.
Yeah.
Baseball postseason, NFL and college football in full swing. Like that to me is the most loaded month. April's sneaky though. April, I feel like can work its way into the top 5.
I'll say number 1 is October for me. Number 2 is March for March Madness. Number 3 is April, the Final Four and WrestleMania. And number 4, Christmas, NBA Christmas games.
December.
Yes.
Okay. Well, by the way, we'll get to some Christmas stuff here coming up in a little bit because that day may no longer belong to the NBA. But, of course, we're focusing this weekend on the women's Final Four as we win another national championship. What are you looking at the poll right now?
Yes, I am. I'm not signed in right now. I'll say this.
Well, what do you think the leader is? What do you think the winner is right now?
I think it's winning another natty.
Okay.
This will be the hardest one if they do go back-to-back. It'll be their 4th, and they'll go back-to-back. But the fact that you're playing in it, this is the same arena 10 years ago from the very first Final Four in 2015, 2016. The only difference now is the 3 teams that are in it are teams that you lost to.
Yeah, which I'd be willing to bet that's never happened before.
I've never seen anything like this happen with Carolina.
The last 3 teams standing have all beaten one of the other teams.
I will say confidently, I personally think UConn could beat UCLA.
They're heavily favored.
I can see that happening. But I can also see UCLA winning because there has not been no answer to Lauren Betts in terms of offensively. There hasn't been an answer. As far as Carolina, I think 4 is their magical number. This is the 4th time they're playing Texas in the Final Four on April the 4th. Like that's kind of
that is a good point.
That is interesting. I'll say this. I have Carolina beating Texas only because Texas has not been consistent in terms of scoring the ball, but their defense has been keeping them in the game. I think if you shut down Texas' defense, you're going to win the game. I have UConn and Carolina in the national championship.
Okay. By the way, the Twitter poll, win another natty, is currently winning right now, 48.6%. A little earlier on this morning, though, losing to UConn was actually the leading candidate, which, again, UConn came in here and they ran you out of your own gym by 29 points. They have been on a tear in the tournament. Paige Beckers is playing out of her mind as her college career
102 points
comes to a close.
Games.
Like, they're going to be a problem.
Yes.
You know, if Carolina and UConn win on Friday night, UConn's going to be the favorite team going into the Sunday's matchup.
I think they will. I think the key to stopping UConn, Paige Beckers is the head of the snake. I think what we saw when they came to Columbia, she wasn't really scoring a whole lot of points, but her assist numbers was up, and other players were getting a lot of good production on Carolina's bad showing at home. I think this game will be a different game. I think if you slow down, if you're able to make it hard for Paige Beckers, it's going to be hard for their offensive system to get going. But their defense is really good. I think what we have not seen yet is a consistent flow from Carolina's offense. Now's the time to kind of practice that going into the Final Four. But, hey, it's going to be the men's and the women's Final Four, this is the best I've seen it in a while.
Yeah, well, and look, the women's Final Four is typically pretty chalk. Now, of course, Southern Cal lost, and UConn comes in as a number 2 seed, but you have three of the number 1 seeds left standing, and it's all number 1 seeds on the men's side. And as we've talked about, yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean the first couple of rounds of the tournament were exciting because you didn't have crazy upsets and all that kind of stuff. But you've got your best teams playing in the biggest games at the very end, and that should. Look at what happened this past weekend with men's basketball. I know Duke kind of ended up running away with it, but that was a heavyweight matchup between Duke and Alabama.
Yeah,
we got a lot of great basketball games because your best teams are still standing.
And it's like Duke has progressively gotten better as the tournament has gone on. It's like they're getting harder to beat. Now, going into this game against Houston, I don't know what to expect because Houston's defense is big time. Now, I think it's going to be the game to me is Auburn and Florida. Two SEC teams going at it in the Final Four. One of them, whoever wins that, will more likely be a favorite. Well, not over Duke because Duke is the overall favorite to win it, but they will have a good shot. I want to see Florida. I have not seen Florida really play against a style like Duke, but their story of how they gotten back and turned that program around within the last 2 years has been remarkable to watch.
Yeah, again, we're going to see the end of the college basketball season wrap up this upcoming weekend, but as we've talked about plenty this morning, a lot of crazy things happening here locally when it comes to South Carolina and their own basketball team when it comes to the transfer portal as Michi Johnson making his return after going to Ohio State, to South Carolina, back to Ohio State, then coming back to South Carolina. Look, he's not. I question, does he automatically become the biggest star of this team?
No.
Because, again, he was a featured part on what happened last year with the team making the tournament run. And, look, he had his moments. There were some nights where he was on, and he looked like the best player on the court. Other nights when he was off and looked like he should have been sitting the bench for half the game, which he ended up doing sometimes. But in terms of, name, in terms of what he's done so far, I mean, he kind of has the best resume out of what we know this team to look like as of right now.
But with him coming back, does this sway Colin Murray-Boyles to stay?
No. Listen,
really?
There is no way I see Colin Murray-Boyles coming back. And maybe I'm wrong, but I would be shocked if CMB were to come back. And I don't think the compliment of Michi does anything for CMB personally.
No, because they did land two big players in the transfer portal last weekend. So that adds some context. I think Michi coming back to me was a shock. I didn't expect him to come back after what him taking, the Gamecocks to the tournament.
But see, he didn't take them there. He was a piece. He wasn't a key piece, but he was not if this year Carolina turned it around in the last 8 games and went on a winning streak, we would have said that C&B carried South Carolina into the tournament because he was by and large the best player on the team. Michi Johnson was not by and large the best player on the team a year ago. He was an important part, and again, when he had a good night, he had a good night.
Yeah,
but it was inconsistent. So I don't think he wasn't carrying the team on his back.
I'm just interested to see now with Michi, is his game going to be elevated from what we saw? I didn't really see a whole much of him at Ohio State.
We played 10 games, and he sat out the rest of the season with personal issues off the court. So he hasn't played a lot of basketball since he left South Carolina.
Yeah, so what is it going to look like?
What's the factor of that going to be? Because, again, basketball is a sport about repetition. And if you're out of it for a while, what does that do to you?
And then you lose Cam Scott, who was transferring, which is I kind of saw that coming because I didn't really see a whole lot of playing time from him from when I was watching, the games in person. Kind of saw that happening. But Studi coming back was kind of like a big piece for them to get back. I mean, he didn't really play a whole lot either, but that was one of your highly productive players offensively for your team. And to bring him back, possibly his final year, that's big too. But I just don't know what this team is going to look like. I don't really see him as a leader. But in an event that Colin Murray-Boyles stays, that will help them a lot. But like I said, I agree with you. I kind of see him going to the draft. He hasn't really said anything publicly yet. I don't know when he will say.
He's got time.
Yeah, he has some time. But we'll see. We'll see. I just think the longer this drags out, I'm building more confidence that Murray-Boyles might come back. But for right now, I have him going into the league.
Like I said, I would be very shocked on him coming back. And also from the standpoint of the money he would command, because you're going to have to make it worth his while and essentially match or do better than what an NBA first round, likely not lottery pick would be making. And I just don't think, for the good of the entire program, in terms of being able to have pieces around him, I don't think you can have CMB and also go out and get a bunch of high-level players too. Because, again, we saw CMB without a bunch of guys around him this year, and it wasn't great. So in order to have balance across your roster, I think you're going to have to distribute your money across multiple guys as opposed to just putting a ton of money in one guy and hoping the other guys around him can step up. Because, again, you tried that this year and it didn't work.
I think landing, Eagle staff and Chris Azadonka from Providence was a big help, even though if, Murray Boyles comes back. I mean, Azadonka, he only averaged 4.3 points per game last season, but in his career, he's a 50% three-point shooter. So it's kind of like a similarity to B.J. Mack in a sense.
Yeah.
And Eagle staff was one of the top players in the Summit League for, I think, North Dakota.
Yep.
Guy can flat out shoot. Great mid-range, great three-point shot. My only question is, can you finish at the rim consistently, and is your defense solid? Because Coach Parrish is a defensive-minded coach from what we know.
Yep.
We got to see that transfer. And this is an SEC league that has put up historical numbers all across the board, both men's and women's basketball. How does he fit into that? And then also Eli Ellis. I think Eli Ellis will be the guard to build around since he is the future coming into Carolina. I'm interested to see what that's going to look like, you having three guards and Michi Johnson, Eagle Staff, and Eli Ellis coming in next year.
Now, again, we're kind of saying the same things about Cam Scott a year ago.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, CMB, if he moves on after year number 2, then Cam Scott's the guy that you're going to build around. And look, I've seen Eli Ellis' stuff from high school. Dude's good. Dude can shoot the ball well. Like he has a lot of confidence in himself, obviously, but again, we've seen guys like Cam Scott struggle to make that transition from high school to college. So I'm not ready to put my all the eggs in the Eli Ellis is going to be a superstar basket until I see it translate.
Me neither. I've never seen him play in person before. I'm just looking off of highlights. I got to see the real deal for me personally to say, okay, this is a legitimate player, and just got to see, how does he dwell up against competition both in the non-conference and in the SEC.
Yeah, so we'll see. Again, very important offseason for men's basketball and a lot of portal activity going on this week as they try and figure out what the 2025-26 team is going to end up looking like. Speaking of figuring out what teams are going to look like, we have so many questions about South Carolina football as spring practice rolls along. Coach Beamer talked to the media yesterday about what's been happening the past 2 weeks. We'll get his thoughts on that coming up next. A quick reminder, the Carolina Calls tonight with Coach Maneri here on the game at 6 o'clock here in Columbia, as well as 100.3 the game in Myrtle Beach, as he recaps the win last night against Presbyterian and looks ahead to Mississippi State on the road this upcoming weekend. It is the Extra Point. It's our head and Jalen Tart along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jalen Tart along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Coming up in a little bit, I have another chance for you to win some tickets to go to Tartan Day South this upcoming weekend, April 3rd through the 6th, out at Historic Columbia Speedway. Check out the website for details at tartandaysouth.com. Again, going to give you a chance to win some tickets here coming up again in just a little bit. We are 2 weeks into spring practice, 2 weeks to go before the spring game on April the 18th. And as we've kind of said a lot about this team, Jalen, we're still trying to answer a lot of questions, most of which we're probably not going to have answers for by the time spring practice wraps up here in a couple weeks. And we're going to have a lot of these same questions going in and start next year because there's so many new things, new faces, new everything about this team in a lot of ways.
My question is, who will be the backup behind the Lenore's, Cutter or Air?
We had this discussion in the last hour. I think in the short term, it's probably Luke Doty, just because of his experience.
I forgot about Luke Doty.
Like again, God forbid, knock on wood, if Lenore Sellers got hurt in the first game, and you need somebody to come in for a couple drives, probably Luke Doty. But if it's a long-term thing, like, oh, hey, Sellers is going to be out for 3-4 games in the beginning, probably initially Luke Doty, then I think you try and turn it over to Aaron Nolan because the thought is he's going to be your future once Lenore Sellers moves on, possibly after this year if he goes to the NFL, if his third season's good enough. But again, he's not taking a college snap so far. Neither is Cutter Woods. Dante Reno played in garbage time last year. How much is that worth? We'll see. But it's a unique situation to have an experienced quarterback with very unexperienced quarterbacks behind him.
I feel you. And I think Cutter Woods is the future for not right now, but I think bringing him in as one of the top high school prospects in the state, I mean, it's pretty good. I mean, he's a quarterback that completes 69.5% of his passes. That's close to 70%. That's pretty darn good. I'm interested also as well, offensively, Shula, the coordinator, how his system will be different from Dow Loggins, and what the freshmen will bring to the table with the experienced group going into next season. Just kind of want to see just a taste during the spring game.
And with that, Coach Beamer spoke yesterday about, trying to make the spring game as close to a real game as possible. And again, Carolina is one of the few places around the country that's still playing a spring game because so many other programs have canceled theirs. But here's what Coach Beamer said about trying to make that game as close to the real thing as possible.
We try and make it as much like a game as possible and not another practice. Now, we haven't gotten into the specifics of this year, Jack, as far as the structure of it, but as long as we have, healthy bodies and we've been able to stay fairly healthy. As long as we have healthy bodies, I want to have, 2 teams and play it as much like a game as we possibly can. Now, are you going to see Lenora Sellers in the fourth quarter? Probably not. But would he be in the spring game and playing some? Yeah. And it just goes back to, kind of what Phil said. We don't get any kind of opportunity against another team. So we want to treat it as much like a game as we possibly can, because the next time that we're playing in front of a big crowd is going to be in Atlanta against Virginia Tech. So we want to make it as much game-like as we possibly can.
And again, that's what you expect to hear a coach say, but it is a balance between getting the most out of it, but also not giving a lot away. And I know it's not going to be televised this year, so you're not worried about everybody around the country watching your game and trying to glean something from it. But we know you're going to come out there with a vanilla game, playing vanilla offense, vanilla defense, and just kind of hitting the basics. But it's more about, I guess, for those in attendance, seeing who stands out.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, that guy looks good. Hey, here comes this freshman. Here comes this transfer. Whoever it may be, of getting an idea of what can be the featured guys going into this fall.
I think also, too, making it a real scenario of making it like a game is smart, because you're not playing against another team where I feel like you would need at least a closed scrimmage before the beginning of the season against a quality team. With women's basketball, they have scrimmages before their season.
Well, every sport, with the exception of college football, scrimmages.
Right.
That's something that Beamer's brought up before. And I know Colorado and Syracuse are trying to do the combined practice thing that the NCAA shot down, but it's crazy that college football is the only sport, literally in all of sports, that doesn't do those kind of things.
Because you get to really see where your whole team is at against another team that you're never, that you don't have no familiarity with. But I think making it in a real, game like feel for the spring game is a smart idea. I think, like you said, it's kind of it's a sneak peek as to what we can see, and I think him making that as he's trying to play it out to what it would be like in Atlanta. Atlanta's it's a neutral site game, and it's against Virginia Tech, where Shane Beamer has a lot of history tied to him and to his family. But it will be interesting to see. I'm interested to see all three phases of the game of players that stand out. The quarterbacks, to me, is what stands out the most, because if in a situation, if Lenoris goes down, who do you go to step up and be that leader when Lenoris is down? Hopefully Lenoris does not go down this season, because he is in talks of being in the Heisman from what we saw at the end of last season. So hopefully he can continue that momentum going into this season.
Yeah, a lot to learn. Again, we're not going to get all the answers to our questions through this spring because it's a short month, and again, there's so many areas of this team that are so different than a year ago. But I think we all kind of look forward to the spring game. Again, it's kind of seeing who stands out and all that kind of stuff, though. I always caution people, take it with a grain of salt, because inevitably every single year there's one guy in the spring game that goes crazy, does something amazing, has great stat line, and everybody's excited about going to the fall that ends up barely ever playing. So, outside of the usual guys, if Sellers goes out there, then obviously he's going to be the starting quarterback, and, he can go out there and have a great spring game, and that could be something that tells you about his production in the fall. But if somebody you haven't heard of in the spring game beforehand goes out there and has a crazy game, then maybe don't expect him to go out there and be a superstar in the fall necessarily.
I just hope that they don't get pranked like how the mannequin scared everyone.
Good.
That was a good one.
That was a good.
That was a good one.
Apparently, Justin King said he Pavloved that for a while because they had it, I guess, sitting in the facility for a couple of months to get people used to it.
Yeah.
So then when they put somebody in it, it made it better. Because, look, if a mannequin just pops up out of nowhere, you're like, what's going on with this? But if it's been sitting there consistently, you've walked by it every day for 3 months, then, they did a good job with that.
Somebody stiff-armed the mannequin, the fake mannequin. But I was like, okay, but everybody got scared.
Dylan Stewart didn't even react. He was like,
okay.
Lenoris about fell down.
He was about to run out of it. Shane Beamer almost.
So I'm almost kind of disappointed because, and I forget who was walking in front of Beamer, but they jumped out at the player. Beamer was about 10 feet behind him.
Yeah.
I was like, they should have waited for Beamer to get up on him.
Yeah.
And
then get Beamer.
They didn't get Beamer's in his face reaction. But they did a good job with that. Everybody over there at the social team at South Carolina does an amazing job, and that was very well done. So I
think
enjoyed
doing stuff like that too, like I said last week, it brings the fun in the program of what you could really see when you experience, playing for South Carolina. So good kudos to their social media and their video team for doing something like that.
Absolutely. Well done. We'll continue on the Extra Point coming up next. Jen Jensen going to check in with me as she does each and every Wednesday. Talk a little bit of racing ahead of Throwback Weekend at Darlington coming up this weekend. That's coming up next. The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart along with you here on the game. And welcome back in to the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. As always, time to talk some racing with Jen Jensen from the early game. Very exciting week. Obviously getting set for Darlington Throwback Weekend coming up on Saturday and Sunday, which we'll get to in just a moment. But we had a interesting weekend, to say the least, out at Martinsville this past weekend.
Yeah, and really more so for the Xfinity Series. But an exciting, good racing overall, and I was thrilled for that because that's obviously what you want the most of. But yeah, let's talk a little Xfinity racing.
Yeah, we definitely will. I'll start off with the Cup Series first, with Denny Hamlin picking up the win on Sunday, dominating really the 400-lap event there up in Martinsville. And, it's crazy to think that it had been 10 years since Denny Hamlin had won at Martinsville. That was a track that he won left and right at, back in the day, but last one coming in 2015 and kind of looked like he returned to his form. You had other guys up there that looked strong, like Chase Elliott, Bubba Wallace, Christopher Bell, but nobody really had anything for Denny Hamlin, especially in that last stage. And, he pretty much held it in check there to the very end.
Yeah, he did. And it seemed like a few times maybe somebody else was, for a while, Chase Elliott was doing, like you said, was doing really well. And I thought he could do it, but he just kind of used up his stuff and never really could get back into that even top three. He's running more like, top five. But even Bell found himself kind of chasing Hamlin quite a bit, and just they were all using up their stuff. And Hamlin definitely had the dominant car, and that's what, 6 grandfather clocks for him.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Where did you put them all?
I don't know. I feel like it was his first one with his new crew chief, so I feel like you maybe give him this one.
There you go.
I mean, what, you have one, and that's probably going to satisfy you. Well, Denny's got a nice house on the lake and up there at Lake Norman, so maybe one for like every floor or something. I don't know, but they have to wind them, and they do the cuckoo clock thing. So I don't.
Yeah, right.
It's like a headache.
Too much to do.
Yeah.
Big problem to have.
Yeah, I know, right? Good problem to have, and all the money and everything else that Denny Hamlin deals with on a day-to-day basis. But the race overall, very solid. I go back to last fall when Ryan Blaney won there, and they used a softer tire, and I thought that was a very good race, and I thought Sunday was good as well. And I'm not for a ton of carnage and kind of ton of cars being torn up and all that kind of stuff, but you had guys spinning out, had guys making mistakes, guys running into each other, like kind of a quintessential short track type of race. Yeah, we didn't have the thrilling finish or something like that a lot of people look for in a quality race like that. But I thought overall it was compelling, and strategy, managing your tires and those kind of things. We've seen with these softer tires, that was neat to watch.
Yeah, it really was. And the tire wear was really good. The temperatures being maybe a little bit cooler helped with that for the day. But overall, yeah, I think the racing was good. I think the softer tire proved again its value, and I think we continue to use that on short tracks to really have some quality racing.
Yeah, I think this has got to be the standard going forward for all these smaller tracks where you've seen struggles with the next gen car for the inability to pass and all that kind of stuff, where you create something that causes a discrepancy, where you can go out there and run hard and burn your tires off and not have as much grip later on in the run, and comers and goers and all that kind of stuff. So if you can't out the horsepower, if you can't change too much else on the car, this seems like the best solution for the time. So, I guess we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do hope that we will continue to use that tire going forward. And it kind of looks like as every race that has a lot of good success, I think we will continue to see it.
Yeah. The option tire thing at Phoenix a couple weeks ago was pretty interesting, and definitely created some, interesting strategy with guys, putting on the red tires and just being lightning fast. I don't know how it would work at Martinsville if you'd be quite the same effect, because again, you are running a lot slower compared to a place like Phoenix.
Yeah.
I think again, what we've had with the soft tire the past 2 races has been solid. I imagine that's what they're going to bring back in the fall. But I do hope NASCAR, because I know they said they're not going to do it anymore this year, but I hope they keep the option tire thing open to maybe trying again, because I did think that created a lot of intrigue a couple weeks ago.
I totally agree. I think that's a good option. I think they need to keep it as an option.
Yeah, not option tire as an option.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course, that was the Cup Series race on Sunday, but the real story around the entire NASCAR industry is what went down on Saturday with the Xfinity Series race, where, God, it felt like they couldn't run more than 5 laps without causing a caution. And, of course, the biggest moment came at the very last lap, where Sammy Smith just dive bombs the last corner, takes out Taylor Gray and himself in the process, and Austin Hill, comes on through to win the race, and he had some run-ins in the race as well. But it wasn't just the moment on the last lap; it was the entire race. Guys running over each other, not trying to make turns, and just creating this giant cluster of a race that is not indicative of how good racing at Martinsville can be in that series specifically. Because again, they don't have car problems. The Xfinity car is about the perfect race car that you can imagine, and
That's
they race
true.
it everywhere. And if you just have a straight up race, it's going to be entertaining. But we've gone way past this point where these guys are just running over each other. It happens time and time again at this track. And this time around, you're seeing an industry-wide response on it saying, hey, this isn't okay.
Yeah, and there were over 100 caution laps run, I believe, in that race. You're trying to get people to tune into the younger drivers. You're trying to get people invested in racing in general. And if it looks like it's just bumper cars out there, that's not what you're trying to accomplish by any means. And I understand aggressiveness and hard charging. And one of the guys was interviewed, and I don't remember which one it was, but that's what they do. And I'm not going to sit back and not have an opportunity. I don't think that's still the right way to go.
There's two pieces of this for me. I think what we have in a championship format now, with winning your in being so important, because again, Sammy Smith was looking at getting himself into the playoffs by winning that race, and he was going to drive through Taylor Gray to do that. So that's a part of it. But also the fact that I don't think guys coming up through the ranks have the ability to learn racecraft as much as they once did. And back in the day, it used to be, you're in your late 20s, early 30s before you ever get to the Cup Series. You have a lot of time to mature and all this kind of stuff. These guys are getting in Xfinity cars when they're 18, 19 years old and having to run a whole lot of races up to that point. Plus, you add in the fact that Cup Series drivers are limited in the series. It used to be back in the day, 10 or so years ago, they were running every single week. Not running for the championship maybe, but you had Cup guys all over the field, and if you were up there running up front, you were around a ton of Cup guys doing it. So you learned racecraft, you learned give and take and all that kind of stuff that, Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch and stuff, they'll go down and run the occasional Xfinity race, but it's not like it once was. And I do think that's having a profound effect on this, what is a development series, in terms of these guys learning the proper way to race.
I think actually that's a really, really good point, because again, like right now in the Cup Series, you have Carson Hocevar, who's been taking some grief because he's been a little more hard charging and everything, doing what young guys do, but having the older drivers to talk to him about it and give him words of wisdom. You learn from that. That should be the same that's happening with just a lesser amount of Cup drivers. So yeah, I agree. I think the developmental aspect might be getting lost, and they're out there to muscle their way and win, and they're not too worried about their equipment.
Sammy Smith was docked 50 points yesterday by NASCAR for taking out Taylor Gray at the end of the race. Also fined $25,000. Taylor Gray and Jeb Burton were fined $5,000 each for going to the care center to confront drivers. Taylor Gray and Sammy Smith kind of had a argument outside of the care center, and Jeb Burton, again, there were so many guys running into each other. I forget who he confronted after the race, but that was addressed as well. But again, for Sammy Smith, yeah, that's a pretty big points hit, but I don't think that's going to deter anybody from doing this again. I mean, we had the same conversation in the Cup Series with the Richmond incident with Austin Dillon and Denny Hamlin last year. And NASCAR took away the playoff, eligibility for it, which I think is pretty significant, but I still don't think we've done enough to discourage someone in that moment from saying, I better think twice if I'm going to do this, because I could drastically alter my entire season.
Yeah, I agree. I think there need to be harsher penalties. It's like, okay, put the paddle back in the principal's office, because there should be more fear of repercussions for what their behavior is.
And look, Kevin Hart said this on his podcast this week, and back in the day when he did dumb stuff, he was getting grilled by Mike Helton and Bill France Jr. and Jim France and all those kind of guys, or Jim Hunter, all those kind of guys. I don't think we have that in NASCAR anymore. We have figureheads. Steve Phelps just got named commissioner this week, which is really just more of a change in title than anything else. But I don't think him or Steve O'Donnell or those in charge, Jim France right now, have that same cachet and are really want to put their fist down in the same way that some of these other leaders have in years past. And I think that's having an effect too.
Yeah, I agree. So I do think something needs to be changed. And it was kind of funny to hear Denny Hamlin talk about how if I had been in the booth for that race, he said I probably would have been fired. But yeah. I think maybe also this is another time for those Cup drivers to speak up and get with the sanctioning body, and they should have some kind of a say in how this develops.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens this weekend at Darlington. Not a short track, but a place where there is plenty of contact, sometimes with the wall, sometimes with other cars. Sherstone Road Show is going to have us all out there on Friday morning, as always. Looking forward to that. And so much to get into that we don't have time for. I do have to ask, though, from what we've seen so far, do you have a favorite throwback that we're going to see this weekend?
Boy, I was kind of digging the Kyle Larson.
That's a good one. The 2 years in a row with Terry Labonte, it's very solid.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good. Where are you?
So Brendan Poole in the Xfinity Series is doing a throwback to Jeff Gordon's 2001 Looney Tunes.
Oh yeah,
car.
I did see that.
They detailed every sponsor on the car, and he's because Bugs Bunny was on the hood of the car because it was Looney Tunes. It's a caricature of him in the Bugs Bunny type of art style. They knocked it out of the park. I'm so excited to see.
I need to look at that in more detail.
I've got the die cast on my shelf. I have half the mind to take it with me and do a side by side.
Oh, that'd be great.
So I'm excited to see that one.
Yeah, I think there's some really good schemes out there this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing them all on display and running around Darlington.
Yeah, going to be fun. As always, we appreciate Josh Harris and everybody over there for having us out there, and can't wait to be out there on Friday and take it all in this weekend.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk about what happens at Throwback Weekend coming up next week as we talk racing each and every Wednesday. It is the Extra Point. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 2 on your Wednesday here on The Game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jalen Tart along with you here on your Wednesday. Wrapping up hour number 2. Quickly need to get to our Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. Unfortunately, the Atlanta Braves have sprung a leak to start the season. We are not even a full week in to the Major League Baseball season. Braves are the only team that have not won a game. They fall last night once again 3-1 to the LA Dodgers. It's a long season. There's 156 games left to play, but Braves fans not feeling great right now.
Yeah. It's the start of the season. I mean, 160 games is a lot of games. I mean, they have plenty of time to turn it around, but slow starts can lead to finishing and, crazy finishes. So hopefully they can turn it around very quickly.
Yeah, so we'll see if they can get it back on track. Another game against LA tonight, returning home, take on the Marlins this upcoming weekend. You made a mention a little bit earlier on in the hour about the NBA on Christmas Day and how that makes the month of December very special for you. Well, I hate to break it to you, but I think the NFL is officially taking over Christmas Day. 2 games this past year, played 1 game the year before. I kind of figured in the past couple of years they've been dipping their toe into this. They were eventually going to take a stranglehold on it. This year, they're going to be playing a triple header on Christmas Day. 2 games on Netflix, 1 game on Amazon. It's basically taking up the entire day. So any ratings the NBA was hoping to get around the NFL, not going to happen.
I'll be honest. We don't know the schedule for the NBA for Christmas, and we do not know the schedule for. Well, we won't find out the NFL schedule until May.
Yeah.
So we have a few more weeks until that happens. But if they can add some heavy hitters in this Christmas lineup, and the fact that they're streaming these games now with Netflix and Amazon, those numbers are going to go up.
Well, that's the thing is they're going to put premier matchups on Christmas Day. You had the Steelers and the Chiefs, and I forget who else played on the Ravens. I think played on Christmas Day last year as well, and the Texans. I believe it was the Texans. So you had heavy hitters all day long, and now you got the opportunity to have 6 different teams on there.
Yeah,
it's going to be the Chiefs. It's going to be the Packers. It's going to be the Eagles. Who knows? A lot of big names likely going to be playing Christmas Day. Is again. The NFL is such a machine, right?
Yeah.
Anything they set their mind to and decide to take over, they do. And it kind of begs the question to me, what's next, right? Because we thought, they'd never touch Christmas Day unless it ended up on a Sunday. But now, no matter what day Christmas is on, I think it's on a Thursday this year.
Yeah.
And you have 3 games going on. You can play a game conceivably any day of the week now because you can do the turnaround and have those same teams play, on a Saturday a week later or whatever like they had this past year. So no day is off limits. And my question becomes, okay, what day is next for the NFL to take over?
None. I mean, they're taking over all of they're playing a game on Thanksgiving.
Not all of them. There's a couple days there.
What days of the week? What days?
Think about Black Friday. Now, the past couple of years, they've had a Black Friday game. 1 Black Friday game in the middle of the day at like 3 o'clock. What's stopping them from adding 2 more games?
Yeah.
Go 1, 4, and 8.
But how many games are we going to have on the Sunday? Not that many.
You'd still have enough to fill out your time slot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a deep rotation of games, but if you played, let's see, 12 games, or excuse me, if you played 6 games between Thursday and Friday on Thanksgiving and Black Friday, then you'd still have 10 games to play on Sunday.
Yeah.
And 1 game on Monday, so 9 games on Sunday. 1 game on Monday, you'd still have plenty to fill out the week.
Yeah, you can do 5 and 4, where you could have 5 at the early part of the game, the 1 o'clock games, and then 4 o'clock game. But you're not gonna have. Are you gonna have a Sunday night game?
Yeah, you'd still have Sunday night games.
Have a Sunday game. Okay.
You have 3 in the noon window, 3 in the late afternoon window, and then you have
a double header
on Sunday
a
and 1 game on Monday.
Yeah,
so you can still do it. You have enough teams to do it.
Yeah,
but like that's my thing is like. They're going to eventually do this, right?
My thing is, like, we don't. Whoever they put on the schedule, what if they're not good? Oh, they could. I mean, they could easily flip.
Here's the thing: it doesn't matter if they're good or not. The NFL is such a ratings monster. Look at Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Thursday Night Football is usually the worst game of the week. Crappy football, a lot of times played between crappy teams, and they get millions of people to watch it because we are so starved for football in our society.
Yeah.
It does not matter if the Lakers and the Celtics play on Christmas Day and you put the Jaguars and the Giants head-to-head with them. More people would watch the Jaguars and the Giants. I guarantee you that.
So let me, okay, so you would want to see the Jaguars and the Giants, the worst teams in the league. You would want to see them versus a Steph LeBron. Well, we've seen Steph LeBron. I would want to see a Celtics Lakers Christmas Day game.
But see, that's you saying that. That's not speaking for everybody.
For
though.
everybody.
As a society, we love football a whole lot more. And it does not matter how good the NBA matchups are. If the NFL is on at the same time, more people are going to watch the NFL.
I think in the general light, both sports will do phenomenal in the ratings. But for football, with the middle of the football season, with college going on too, they're going to, like you said, they're going to dominate. Me knowing that as well, they're going to dominate. It's just a matter of what teams are you going to have playing in these games? Well, that's really what comes down to it. They're going to do numbers.
They're going to put their best teams there. So the likelihood of those teams being bad is lower, right? Again, they're not going to give the Jaguars a Christmas Day game. It's going to be your big name teams, your Eagles, your Chiefs, your Packers, your Cowboys, things like that.
I think the teams that play in Thanksgiving are automatically disqualified from playing for Christmas.
Yeah, that's possible. Again, you got enough teams you can rotate
I'm cool with
through.
that. Shoot.
I mean, most of the Thanksgiving games were kind of crappy this past year, but we watched.
My thing is, why have they not done a Christmas Day game for so long? Because from what I've read on CBS Sports, the league tried to avoid scheduling the Christmas Day game.
Well, then they realized how much money they could make off of it, and you had partners like Netflix saying, hey, we'll pay you billions of dollars to broadcast these games. So, of course, they did it. That's where we are now.
Is it still better than the Final Four? No. To me, no.
It's a machine.
Yes.
Keeps on rolling.
It does.
Better get out of the way. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Wednesday on the Game. 11 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, Wes, and Chris along with you. You know, guys, doing this job sometimes, I wonder the night before what exactly we're going to come in and talk about the next day. And some days, especially as we get in the summer and stuff, it's slim pickings because there's not a whole lot going on. But my goodness, we were blessed with a wealth of content just from one team alone to talk about today, not to mention everything going on with spring football and baseball and all that kind of stuff. If you've been living under a rock for the past 24 hours, the men's basketball team has given us a ton of news out of the transfer portal that maybe you thought was April Fool's, but can confirm all this is indeed true.
Was there ever a doubt that something always pops up, Tyler?
Not always. There are some
almost
days,
always.
There are some days
almost
where
always.
it's a little difficult.
The summer it gets difficult.
It does.
This time of year, Gamecock athletics, good, bad, ugly in the middle. Something pops up, and yesterday certainly an interesting day. However, the number of people that responded on social media and said, "Is this April Fool's?" was crazy to me.
Well, anything that happens on April 1st, you have to be suspect, right? No matter what it is.
I guess. Do we got Chris on the line there?
There we go.
There we go.
My favorite party yesterday, guys, was, and I'll admit it got me, but it was not April Fool's, if that makes sense. So Gamecock basketball is putting out, they would do like the whole, we're going to do a somewhat cryptic tweet followed by some news, right?
Yep.
So they put out the eagle, right? The eagle emoji. And here's Trey Engelstaff. Well, they put out one that had a flag in it. And I'm like, I remember a little bit from high school. That's a French flag. And for a brief moment, I started racking my brain. I even texted a couple people who were already texting me about hoop stuff. And I'm like, France. But then I remembered that I'm good friends with Wes Mitchell, who had already informed me that Christ Essendoko was French. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that's for him. And then they put out that he signed. So I did have a brief moment. It was kind of funny.
Now, I think they put out the video of Lamont dancing, which would have been a reference to Michi making his return. Now, this is something
he was dancing in all the announcements.
That's true. I have to go back and look. Was Michi in the video of him dancing where they were showing, or I guess referencing the announcement? Because I imagine that's a little bit of an older clip that he could have been in.
Michi is in there.
Okay, there you go.
Michi, but everybody got to dance though.
Okay,
I think
now, and again, Michi's the headline of all this, and this is something that has been talked about, rumored for a couple days. That again came to fruition yesterday. Now he still has to get an approval for the extra year of eligibility. Keep that in mind. But it's such a unique situation to start at Ohio State, come to South Carolina, go back to Ohio State briefly, and only played 10 games this past year, only to return to South Carolina. That's something that I think we talked about this yesterday. I don't think we've ever seen before in the portal era, a guy flip-flopping between two teams like that. But Michi Johnson, again, assuming he gets the approval on the waiver, will become a South Carolina Gamecock once again.
Yeah, and I think South Carolina would not be taking him if there was not a great deal of confidence that he'll be able to play next year. I think is worth mentioning. I also appreciate, I think, Chris, you and I, we must talk about this on the podcast, Michi's tweet, just acknowledging to an extent the absurdity of everything. He said, LOL, I get it. Going back to the same two schools twice, and then he has the emoji with the guy with his hand on his head. This isn't what I imagined nor thought my career would be like, but I serve a perfect, merciful, and graceful God, and I know this is his journey for me. So, Michi, I mean, if you sit down and talk to Michi, it's really hard not to love the guy. Passionate dude, thoughtful guy. As he just admitted, it's been a weird career. That's cool. I don't think you got to hate the guy, obviously, because he's had a very unorthodox path. But let's be honest, Chris, the most success of his career has been in Columbia with Lamont Paris in this system.
It is. And, you know, something else we were talking about on our pod yesterday, Wes, is Michi a guy who is streaky on the court? Absolutely. Right. And, you know, if you want further evidence, go take a look at his game log from the 2023-2024 season. But I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit, Wes, but I'll properly credit you. This does signal the return of the Michi go-off game, right? Like, you have that because, you know, you go back and there might be times, like I remember Michi had a game against Missouri in 2024 where he went 0 for, you know, he 0 for 9, missed every three, didn't have a point. But then a few games later, you know, he's dropping 22 points, 25 points. Like, he scored 29 in a game against Notre Dame that year. You know, like, this is a guy who can easily come out and hit 5 or 6 threes in a game for you. And there's just such a high level of familiarity. You know, at some point, you get guys in the portal. Like, we all look at Trey Eaglestaff, for example. Seems like a really good fit. We know he can fill it up at his level. We know that he's done it against bigger competition like Alabama, who he dropped, 40-something points on this past season. But there's always an element of, okay, you've got, you know, you don't know until you get a guy in, right? With Michi Johnson, it's going to be a new season. Yes, he'll have different guys around him, but there's a lot of familiarity between Michi Johnson and Lamont Paris and some of the other coaches on the staff and even some of the other players on this team. You kind of know what you're getting with him, and there's a certain comfort level. And as you said, Wes, if they weren't comfortable with that, they could go out and find somebody else. There's like 700 guys in the portal, probably a lot more actually. And
yeah, I think we're in the thousands.
Yeah, we're in the thousands now, like 1,100. That was probably day one. There was like 700. So, you know, there's a comfort level here, and this is also a guy that fits what you really need. Like, with the way this past season went, you can't point to one area and say South Carolina doesn't need that. But man, if you were to pick one, how about somebody who can fill it up and get their own shot and create really at any time? And man, Michi Johnson, he fits that, right?
Yeah, and for him, you know, obviously he went back to Ohio State this past year for things going on off the court, and that was a part of the reason why he stepped away from the game after, you know, only playing 10 games because of things going on with the family and stuff like that. So, you know, comes back here, again, very familiar with everything. Obviously didn't burn his bridges here when he left the first time, and there's that familiarity. There's him and Miles Studi, we're assuming is going to be able to come back through the medical hardship waiver and all that kind of stuff. So you have some of those pieces that made you successful back in 2023, 2024 that got you to the tournament that you are bringing back. And again, it is about putting those pieces around him with Eaglestaff, with the Essendoko who got out of the portal already, and whatever other guys you can add in addition to guys coming in as freshmen as well, like Eli Ellis. So again, it's not going to look the same as the team did 2 years ago, but you have two very vital, important pieces from that team that are expected to be here for next season.
Yeah, and I think with Miles Studi at this point, it's also just about getting him healthy. You know, I think that's something there where, you know, obviously kind of a scary situation with him having to miss so much time this year. Get him healthy, get him back in there. And you're also, guys, building a pretty strong foundation potentially to I'm just saying, just plug CMB back in there at the 4.
Ooh.
If there's, and the missing piece right now that we just do not have names on, at least publicly, is point guard. What does that look like? Mm-hmm. But I think you can kind of already see what they're trying to put together. It's just who is running the point? Because again, if you find the right guy there, you potentially, your best case scenario, I think, is some stud at the point, Michi, Eaglestaff, CMB, Essendoko, and that's your potential starting 5, which I think you can compete with that group. And then you actually have the makings, obviously, with Eli coming in, potentially Studi back, you know, Jordan Butler, Yuga Suk, all those guys sort of making up your depth.
I feel like Wes and I need to make a bet on CB coming back because I'm very much in the camp that it's definitely not going to happen, and Wes is continuing to say, but, hey, wait a minute.
I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I can promise you it's not a definite that he's gone.
Yeah.
100%.
I'd be very surprised.
100% not a definite.
Yeah. Definitely probably a possibility.
I would say over 50% that he's back.
Okay.
Ooh,
I'm not that confident.
Okay,
You're not that confident in your prediction?
No, in him coming back.
Okay. I was about to say.
I feel pretty confident saying he's going to the NBA.
But the thing with that is, I mean, it could have been the toughest decision in his life, and he still leaves, and
yeah,
it looks like you were right. But I'm just saying there's a possibility.
That's like when a recruit, visits, other likes your school, but goes and visits other schools. And some people put, he was never coming here. Like if he commits somewhere else, it's like, no, actually, like decisions are hard sometimes, when you've got more than one good option. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, we don't know for sure what he's going to do, but I think this is going to sound a little weird, but like, we know for sure that there's not a resolution one way or another. Like I do feel confident that there is a decision to be made. I don't know what it's going to be, but there is a legitimate consideration. And we're not just, saying that just because he hasn't announced something. It's not a formality. And I think we've learned more and more, as the days have gone on, you kind of go, all right, yeah, maybe it seems to make sense that he'll go to the NBA, but you're kind of waiting to get some actual information. And although we don't know what he's going to do, there is everything that we have points to there being like a legitimate decision here. So we'll see where it goes. That would obviously be, that would be huge for this team if that happened. But they do, you make a great point, Wes. Regardless, they're going to have to figure out the point guard piece because that's going to be so critical to this offseason.
Well, CMB was obviously the face of the team this past season. Somebody we thought could be the face of the team going forward has also entered the transfer portal. We'll hit on that coming up next as the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs rolls along on your Wednesday here on The Game.
All right, folks, by now, you've heard about them. It's our friends over at Integrated Media. Head on over to integratedmediainc.com, or if you already got some things you want them to take care of at the house, give them a call, 803-948-8327. Of course, the big tournament is going on. Football always right around the corner. Major League Baseball, although if you're a fan of a certain team like me, maybe you don't even want to watch them right now. Whatever it is you like to watch, whether it is sports or movies, our friends at Integrated can help just take that process for you and take it to the next level, whether it's upgrading the man cave with a full-on home theater system or just some basic upgrades to your living room setup, hiding the cables, hanging the TV, surround sound, putting it all on a sort of iPad or tablet setup where you can just control it all from one spot. They can make it easy and simple for you. Head on over to integratedmediainc.com for more information.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. We'll get back into the men's basketball transfer portal discussion here in just a second. But now is another opportunity for you to win some tickets to go to this weekend's Tartan Day South Festival out at the historic Columbia Speedway. Things get rolling tomorrow and run through Sunday. Got some family 4-pack tickets to you right now on the text line at 803-404-6100. Text in your name, email address, and phone number, and I'll let you know if you're one of the lucky winners to go to Tartan Day South this upcoming weekend. As we get back into the transfer portal discussion here, again, Michi Johnson coming in. Something that I think if you would have told people prior to the season was going to happen after the season, would have been very panicked and very worried. But we get to this point in April and we're not shocked by it. Cam Scott deciding to go in the transfer portal after a underwhelming season, to say the least, in year number 1 here at South Carolina.
Yeah, it's unfortunate when you have a local guy, which Carolina has, not always been able to get the local guys to stay home and play. It's unfortunate when you have a guy who does stay home and play, and it just really didn't work out for whatever reason. And there were obviously very high expectations for Cam, and it just never quite clicked for him here within that system for whatever reason. And I think for a lot of people, they thought before the year, hey, this guy, I was one of them. I was like, I could maybe pencil him into a starting role. When he flipped from Texas to South Carolina, I was going, this guy's probably a starter. And then you're going, well, wow, he's not in. I remember thinking when the first starting lineup came out, well, no Cam. But I was like, well, he'll probably ease in and then eventually be a start. It just never happened. And, again, it's unfortunate. I think as the offseason went along, the writing became a little bit more on the wall that this was, at the very least, a probability, but probably actually going to happen. And then it became official yesterday. So, I hope for Cam he can find a spot that will match up well with him and that he can go and play well. Because I do think there is talent there. But clearly you look at what they're bringing in the portal. Obviously guys who would be playing, in a lot of cases, his positions or and ahead of him, honestly. So I think for Cam, it's about going out, finding a fit, finding where he can play, and then continuing to build his game.
Well, and when you look at Cam, like there's a lot of elements here that made him a person of interest for Carolina fans, more so than other guys on the team, right? You had, Wes, you mentioned a couple of them. Not only an in-state kid, which has been for years such a talking point here at Carolina, right? And the only time Carolina's been to the Final Four, two of the centerpieces of that team, in-state guys, in Thornwell and Dozier. And then you kind of build around them. And with so many very notable in-state misses, when you can get not only an in-state guy who's talented, but also is ranked very high. I mean, Cam Scott, on 3 industry ranking, which is, that weighted average, number 40 player in the country for his class. And that was not, hey, one service has him 20 and one has him 70. Like the lowest ranking was number 50 overall and the highest was number 34. So he was a consensus top 50 guy. He was also not only from the state of South Carolina, but right down the road, right, in Lexington. Then you had the flip from Texas, right? So you had kind of the added excitement of that. Hey, this kid had a big-time offer list. He's committed to Texas. Carolina's able to flip him and keep him home, right? So you also, just to be fair, to be frank, you had some preseason expectations put on him because remember, Lamont Paris said, hey, if he's not an all-SEC guy, I'm going to work for free. That's something that fans have brought up. And even if that's a little tongue-in-cheek, people remember it, right? So you had all these elements that created expectations. And like you said, Wes, just did not click. And so I would not be surprised if Cam goes somewhere and ultimately does quite well for himself. But for Carolina, this was a situation where you've got to get better immediately. And that's why the portal has been so important and such a big part of this strategy.
Well, and that's the interesting thing that you mentioned is where does he end up from here? Does he go try himself at another Power 4 school, somewhere that may be offering him a lot in NIL to come in there and maybe in their system think he can be a fit? Or does he go the mid-major route and kind of, reestablish himself a little bit? And, again, he's got several years of eligibility left. If he goes to, a school in the SoCon or something like that and balls out, he can have another opportunity to go back to a Power 4 in a year or so and kind of resurrect things that way. So it's going to be very interesting to see what path he decides to take in terms of what the future of his career is going to be. But again, when you ask anybody what they thought of Cam Scott here in number one, underwhelming is the word that's going to come up a lot. And again, especially, it's one thing if the team was doing great and he just wasn't getting out there on the court because you had a ton of guys out there that were balling out and this team was having a lot of success. But when you're a team that's struggling and Lamont Paris, for whatever reason, was still not confident enough in putting him out there on the court just to try something and get a jump on next year, that was very telling for where things were at with him.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I think for Cam, I think regardless of what level it is, he and I don't know that the mid-major level would be a bad thing for him, honestly. Like he could maybe go somewhere at the mid-major level and certainly be a starter and maybe even be in a spot to take over some games and build his confidence back up. I think he needs to be somewhere, not that I'm some basketball X and O expert by any means, but somewhere that he can be a little bit more of a slasher, get to the rim type guy. I don't really think his role at Lexington was that of like spot up shooter. I think in this scheme, you have to be able to shoot the three ball. You have to be able to kind of catch the basketball and put it up and kind of be a spot up guy at times. He's more of a get downhill, uses athleticism, get to the rim. Maybe a team that runs a little bit more. Carolina, obviously, we know they have kind of their deliberate pace, and that's the scheme they're going to play in. And I just don't know if it was a perfect fit. And I think if I'm him, and I'm obviously not, but if I'm him, I'm like fit is the word. I'm looking for somewhere that I can really, really find a proper fit for what I am as a player.
And that's what South Carolina has to find in constructing this team. When you have a year like last year, a lot happens to get to that point. And I think one of the things that was pretty apparent is that even when you look at, they're missing some pieces and maybe need more talent overall and need more depth overall, fit might be a factor that we're underrating a little bit, right? Like, think about the NCAA tournament team from the year before. You had some very unique players on that team in BJ Mack, Talon Cooper, Michi obviously on that team that really, really fit what South Carolina was trying to do. They were able to dictate the type of game to the opponents, and they executed it very well, and they were a veteran team for the most part. And so in constructing next year's team, that's what the staff has to go get. And it seems like they found some guys that you got to get them here, and they do have to fit. It can't just be on paper or in theory, but it seems like they are getting some guys that fit that scheme. We know Michi fits it. He's been here and he's done it. But even looking at Esendoko, looking at Eagle staff, they can do some things that I think the staff, where they can plug them into this system and maybe try to recreate some of that magic that got them to such a good spot the year before. So, talent's one thing. You need it. You need talent. You need depth. But I think especially for Paris's system, you also got to look at the fit and what you're getting there.
Fit and experience, too. I mean, that tournament team for Carolina was top 30 in D1 experience. 2 years ago, his Chattanooga team he took to the tournament was top 100 in D1 experience. So he likes guys that played a lot of basketball, and you're seeing that take shape in the guys that he's bringing in, either newly from the transfer portal or coming back in a guy like Michi.
Is there a Talon Cooper out
You'd
there
love
floating
to be,
around?
If there was, that'd be great. They haven't addressed, like you said, the shooting the point guard position just yet. But, man, if there was another Talon floating around out there, that'd be wonderful.
Which the fascinating thing about Talon is it's not that he was the most flashy pickup in the world. I think people around here, like you could tell South Carolina was excited about it.
Sure.
But it wasn't like it was a national story. Oh, this Talon Cooper guy is going to South Carolina. But he ended up being, exactly what South Carolina needed at that position. So is there a guy out there who, I think for one just has a little bit more size than what they had at the spot last year? That's something I think you can tell they liked length at that point guard spot. But as we've talked about, they kind of missed on some guys at point guard there in the last cycle. So can you go out and find someone they don't have to be that flashy of a player? I think particularly if CMB, not to keep going back to it, but if he is back, then you probably feel like you have enough kind of playmakers and scorers on the roster to where your point guard can maybe just be a little bit more of that distributor. If he's not, then if CMB is not back, then for one, you have a massive hole all of a sudden at that 4 spot that you're having to fill. But then I think that puts a little bit more on us, like, all right, can you find a point guard who maybe isn't just a distributor but can also be dynamic when needed?
Yeah, and you look at Cooper, like, to your point, Wes, the year before at Minnesota, if you just looked at a stat line, who's our guard? Who's this transfer guard? Oh, he had, less than 10 points a game, But you dive in, he had 6 assists a game. He only shot 61% from the foul line. He shot 40% overall, 37% from 3, but he was a great fit. And I think you looked at the distribution as the best possible thing. He ended up having his best season. He still scored less than 10 points a game here, right? But the 4 assists a game, he ended up shooting 48% from 3. He gave you exactly what you needed.
Yeah, he was a mold of exactly what you want in a point guard, and we'll see if they can find that in the portal this offseason. Talk some pretty football coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour here on The Game. Well, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Gamecock Baseball picked up their victory last night against Presbyterian, ending a 7-game losing streak. They'll be back in action this weekend, taking on Mississippi State. Tonight at 6 o'clock, you'll hear Carolina Calls right here on The Game in Columbia and 100.3 The Game out in Myrtle Beach with Coach Maneri as he looks back on last night's game and looks ahead to this weekend against Mississippi State as they try and get their first conference series win of the season so far. Getting into spring football a little bit, Coach Beamer yesterday speaking to the media, kind of the 2-week checkup on spring ball so far, talking about a number of things. I want to start off with this because this was a hot button of conversation last week when Coach Shula spoke to the media about Lenora Sellers and his running abilities within Shula's offense. And here's Coach Beamer talking about the plans that Shula has when it comes to Lenora Sellers and how much he's going to be carrying the ball.
I feel good. It's a little bit different in practice because, we're not going to let him run every time in practice. I mean, usually I'm going to blow the whistle and things like that as well and not get tackled. I mean, we've made him live before, but we're not doing that right now in practice. So there's times where certainly he takes off running and the defense is screaming that they tackled him and that they made a sack, and I just kind of look at them and I'm like, come on, fellas, like really, we're still doing this with Lenore's. You didn't make that tackle. But so I'm fine there. He's got a good feel on when to run and when not to run. As far as a passer, I think he's done a good job and continues to improve. He made a lot of big-time throws last season for us, and I've seen him make throws this spring. And you think about it, like he's doing it with a lot of new receivers and new tight ends. Jared Brown's back, Nick Harbor, Mazio, but after that, it's a ton of new faces at the receiver position. Tight end wise, Brady's back and Mo Brown's back, but Jordan Dingle's new. So there's just a lot of new faces out there, and they're trying to get timing down and things like that as well. So I've seen him, certainly grow as a passer, and will continue to. And he's a great playmaker for sure. And I think what Coach Shula was alluding to too is just understanding what's going on, making sure your drop and your footwork are exact and the ball is coming out on time, and then if there's an opportunity to run after you've done all that the right way, then more power to you. I mean, we're not against Lenore's running by any stretch of the imagination, but there's times certainly where we want him to take throws that are there before we run also.
And Beamer's kind of saying exactly what Shula was saying last week. It's not about limiting his ability to run, which I think people kind of panicked about that in the bowl game when he didn't take off as much as he had in the games prior. It's about making him a better all-around quarterback. And we know he has that athletic ability in his back pocket. If play breaks down, he can go out there and do superhuman things like we saw him do so many years ago. But especially if he's going to want to end up going to the NFL, if the season's productive enough this year, he's got to improve in other areas of being an all-around good passer. And that's what Shula and the staff are trying to do with him, while not completely forgetting about that ability to go out there and make plays with his feet if he needs to.
Yeah, and you're always, I'm a broken record at this point, but you're always going to be looking for that balance if you are a running quarterback or if you're a coach who is coaching a running quarterback. You're always going to be having this discussion. And, frankly, there will be games where maybe you say, ran the ball a little too much. Although, in my opinion, if Lenore Sellers is running the football, it's almost always a good thing. But at what point do you start getting into the conversation about your guy taking a beating out there? And, there's a reason why running backs don't have longevity overall. There's a reason why running backs are in a situation where the league ultimately just, treats them differently than almost any other position. And that's because those guys are getting hit so much that it basically shortens their careers. So I think for Carolina, when you have a guy who, let's be honest, your season is riding on Sellers playing well and being healthy and all those things, how many hits do you want him to have? But then are you going, wow, he carried the ball 5 times last game. We're idiots for not running him. I think that's something that coaches and players are always going to be discussing. And there certainly was some panic when people heard what Shula has said, both in his initial press conference and maybe even a little bit here recently during spring. But he does have a point. Ultimately, if Lenoris is going to reach his full potential, which Lenoris Sellers' full potential is number 1 overall pick. Like let's not shortchange him at all. His overall potential is as high as it goes almost. So I think for him, it's just about continuing to develop the nuances that go into being an elite passer while then also having your feet to be kind of that last resort at times.
Yeah, every time, what is a position that we always talk about where you need multiple players? We talk about that with running back, right? You can't just have one, you can't have two. We've seen seasons at South Carolina where you're down to, hey, Brandon Wild's true freshman, you're up, you're a 5th string running back, right? Why do we say that? They carry the ball into piles of humanity, of big, mean people, and you're getting hit, you're getting rolled up on. When you got a guy like Lenoris Sellers, who is a very willing runner, a very capable runner, and at times looks like Superman, you do have to remember that every time he takes off and doesn't just get rid of the football before somebody hits him in the pocket, there's an opportunity where you're going to take a hit, right? Now, how can we forget the Texas A&M hit that he delivered last year to get a first down? How can we forget him dragging, Clemson defenders or eluding Clemson defenders, right, on his way to, a couple big scores and other big runs? Like, those plays are incredible and good for Carolina that they've got somebody that can do that. But I will go back to the term that you use, Wes. There does need to be balance there. You need balance because, look, it's football. You can't not make a play because you might get hurt. That's not what I'm saying. But you do have to keep that in mind. You also have to keep in mind that, Carolina's offense was pretty dangerous last year, especially in the back half during that winning streak, as Sellers continued to improve. When you if you can add in an element to where Carolina is better in the passing game, and that's not just Sellers, that's the protection, the backs, tight ends, receivers. If you can become a better team passing the football, that even opens up the runs for you too, right? So it's not just about protecting your quarterback when he runs the football. It's about having the type of balance where the defense doesn't know what's coming. It opens up the entire playbook for you. So it's a good thing that everybody wants him to continue to improve. He's still going to pull his escape act sometimes. He's still going to run some design runs. It's just about the balance of all of it.
Of course, Lenoris Sellers is a starting quarterback. No debate about that this offseason. But some questions about what's going to be happening behind him in the quarterback room, which we were spoke about yesterday as well, which we'll hit on the other side. Wrapping up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
If you're out there looking for a local, reliable HVAC service for your home or your business in the Midlands, reach out to our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. KrantzCooling.com, Krantz, cooling with a K, KrantzCooling.com, or give Justin Krantz, the general manager over there, and his team a call, 803-755-0793. I've had Krantz Cooling out to my home several times. They did a mini split for me in the garage. They've checked out all the other units at my house to make sure they're running in tip-top shape. Love my experience so much that when my mom moved to Irmo, I got them to go out to her home, too. They put in 2 mini splits for her. They handle all her HVAC needs as well. They could do the same for you. KrantzCooling.com or 803-755-0793. Since 1983, Krantz Cooling, their team has been providing great service to business owners and families in the Midlands. They can do the same for you.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you for a few more minutes here on your Wednesday on the Game. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV. Powered by Integrated Media and sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. Getting back to what Coach Beamer said yesterday, talking to the media, we heard his comments on Sellers and his rushing abilities within Shula's offensive plans. What's going to happen behind Sellers at quarterback? Who's going to be QB2 for this upcoming season? Here is Coach Beamer talking about that yesterday.
Great competition is what's going on behind Lenoris at quarterback. Dante Reno obviously has been here, and it's his second year in the program. Cutter Woods just got here. Aaron Nolan just got here. And Jimmy Francis, it's his second year in the program, so we're very young at that position, obviously, including Lenoris. I mean, it's only his, third year in the program. So we don't have a number 2 quarterback right now. I think, a lot of you guys are eager to anoint certain people as the backup, and we're all about competition, here as well. So there's great competition. Coach Shula is doing a great job of mixing up the reps of who gets work with that group, and sometimes it's Cutter, sometimes it's Air, sometimes it's Dante, and they've all flashed. I think they've all shown great improvement since the beginning of spring practice, and there's no question Dante's improved since last year. There's no question that Air is getting more and more comfortable. We did a little drive out there today where we didn't script anything, Phil. We just put the ball down and just basically played football like a game, and Air led his series. I mean, he led the offense on I was hoping it was going to be about a 4, 5, 6 play drive, but it ended up being a 19 play drive that he took the team down the field. But I'm really excited about Cutter Woods. You guys that followed him in high school know that he's a winner. It's just what he did in high school and comes from a great program up there at Westside with Coach Lane. So I really like the group. We're very young, but there's really good competition going on behind Lenoris right now for sure.
It's a unique situation where you have a quarterback in Sellers who does have a year of experience, but between Aaron Noland, Dante Reno, and Cutter Woods, those guys have only taken a handful of snaps, all those coming from Dante Reno a year ago in garbage time. You also do have Luke Doty, who is still technically playing quarterback as well, splitting time between that and wide receiver. We know he's been in the green no contact jersey through the spring so far. So he's an option too if worse came to worse. And again, we're talking about this, knock on wood, that you don't have to use any of these guys because Lenore Sellers is going to be healthy the entire year. But last year, he got nicked up, missed half the game against LSU, missed the whole game against Akron. You had a experienced backup in Robbie Ashford you were comfortable turning it over to. A little bit different situation this year.
Well, and let's add all this together. If you're talking about, hey, I want Lenoris to run Lenoris, get him the football, let him do whatever he wants out there. There's going to be bumps and bruises. Like, even if you avoid, we won't speak it into existence, but even if you avoid the really bad situation, you're going to have bumps, bruises. You're going to have situations where QB1 has to come out of the game. And so who are you comfortable putting in there, even if it's in short, just situational things? I mean, that drive could be the difference in a win and a loss when you're talking about how little the margin, for error is in these games. So I think it's what we've talked about is fascinating that you have Luke sort of back playing a role in that room, and I think provides a veteran presence there for you. Air Nolan, I think, yes, you have competition. Air was clearly brought in with the designs, at least of the strong possibility of him maybe taking that number 2 role and running with it. But, I think it's worth noting that Beamer mentioned Dante. And then, as we have said, lots of early buzz about Cutter Woods. Now, when you're talking about young quarterbacks, guys, there's a huge difference between there being spring buzz when the practices are structured such that you can go to practice, you can work through everything, and then you have an entire 24 hours. You have the entire next day to process everything from that practice and then put it into, practice the next day. When you're talking about games and game weeks, it's nonstop. And you don't really have that. So I think for Cutter, there are some really, really positive early signs, but you can't really get too far ahead of yourself on that one because it's just too early.
Yeah, I think with Cutter, it's kind of like made of the right stuff. They like how he carries himself. They like the arm. They like his ability to pick things up. But there's a long way to go between that and you feel great if we put him in a game. There's a big leap to take there. And that's normal, at this stage for a guy who's a true freshman. And I go back, Tyler, to what you were saying. If you look through Reno, handful of snaps in a games that frankly, were over, didn't matter. Air Nolan hasn't taken a snap. Cutter Woods hasn't taken a snap. Who has? Well, Luke Doty at quarterback. Now, since he had very meaningful playing time, it's been a while, at the quarterback position. I mean, 2021, he started a bunch of games. He threw 143 passes in the course of several games. 2022, he played some quarterback. And, of course, he's been back and forth or outright in the receiver room. But what that does is it gives you another option of a guy who is not only just in that room, who can be an example for some of these younger players. All the other quarterbacks are young guys, and they love Luke and how he carries himself. But I think he can also, probably Wes, more than just a token inclusion here too, right? Because he's someone who has played quarterback at South Carolina in the SEC, and gives you that experience factor that is missing when you look at the other guys. How's it going to come out? I don't know yet. I don't think anybody knows quite yet.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, if it was a short-term thing for maybe a quarter or half a game or something like that, Doty may be the most comfortable option. If you're going long-term over the course of a couple weeks, and again, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen, then maybe you're looking at, getting Air Nolan to the point of being able to turn the reins over to him. But again, we're talking about all these things where hopefully we don't have to, but it is a possibility you always have to discuss going into a season, especially like you said, Wes, with a quarterback that's mobile and prone to getting hit a lot.
Yeah, and I think from what we've heard, Luke, primarily quarterback and special teams right now, that's been a moving target for him in terms of the split for what he's doing in practice. But, I mean, you're talking about a guy who has completed just about 61% of his passes in his career, has thrown for 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. 82 rushes for 173 yards and 2 scores. So it's a nice luxury to just have that option of a veteran on your roster as you bring the young guys along.
Absolutely. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Halftime show myself, Terry Ford, up next here on the game.
All right, guys, you know the drill at this point. It is lunchtime. Hit up our friends over at Firehouse Subs. You can do that at firehousesubs.com, or easiest way, get the Firehouse Subs app. Hopefully you already have. Hit that Rapid Rescue to go. Order now. You're going to get points every single time you order. And also, you got your favorites, but also if you want to try something new, 2 new versions of the hook and ladder, the classic hook and ladder, but then you've got the zesty garlic hook and ladder and the spicy dill hook and ladder. Both of those part of the new Hot Ones collection from Firehouse Subs. Now, the zesty garlic, if you like something that's a little bit more mild, again, with that kind of the garlic tone, a little bit of the hot sauce flavor, but not really the heat, try that one. If you prefer heat, the spicy dill with that pickle just soaked in the Last Dab Reaper Edition hot sauce from Hot Ones. It's got some heat to it, but if that's your thing, very, very good. Again, 2 new editions of the hook and ladder from our friends at Firehouse Subs.